Now, let's speak briefly about what is meant by the two-tiered system. We have already touched on the fact that Australia's health system involves both private and public provision and funding of health care. So this mixture is really what is meant by the two-tiered system, and it is a key component of Australia's health policy. So in a sense, Australia's health policy includes a two-tiered, health system, which is just a reflection of, the hybridity around, public and private sectors working together in the provision and the funding of Australians' health. So, and this quickly really raises ongoing policy debates about health disparities. The fact that people, depending on where they live and sometimes even who they are, get to experience different challenges relating to how they get access to support services when they need them, and even questions of the cost on, how much we end up spending on health and accessing health becomes quite another question of policy debate, and even questions around sustainability, questions around the effectiveness and even efficiency in the management of the health sector more broadly. So a key part of health policy is ensuring that people are able to get access to healthcare. And this generally relies on some form of health insurance. And in the Australian context, the health insurance involves, again, public and private insurers. So the public one is what is known as Medicare. I believe people will be very familiar with this. And the private one is, different private providers, can provide this. It can be Bupa, it can be, Medibank and all those kinds of providers. And we really have these two kind of providers coexisting. Although over the recent years, we have seen an increase in the government trying to push people to have more private insurance. And there has been this trend in 2024 with the Howard government, trying to very much stand on this, pushing Australians to get to have, private health insurance rather than just keep relying on, the universal health cover. So, the assumption here was that by focusing on many people having private health insurance, that would reduce the demand on the public system, and that would be really kind of encouraging people to take out private health insurance using both incentives and even penalties. For example, you see now that if you don't have private health insurance by the age of 31, there might be taxes and penalties which might be affecting you in a disproportionate way. And again, all this is this trend in the government trying to push more people getting private health cover. And there are specific types of visa. If you are still on a temporary visa in Australia, then definitely you are not even eligible to Medicare, and the only thing you can get is private health cover. So again, all these are um, you know, these trends in the government to push people in getting private health cover. So another thing which we don't very much speak about is the trend now even of many people paying out of pocket. And this snapshot, which I took from the website of, the Department of Health and Aged Care, kind of really gives you just an idea, snapshot of how much on average people spend out of pocket across different Australian states. You can see here the different figures. But the question here is, that this is really just an illustration of how Australians continue to incur significant health expenditures, and this comes often in an unexpected way, whether you have private or public, health insurance. And even when you are, not having either, you will still pay out of pocket. So clearly there is this understanding that many people still pay out of pocket, and much fund are still going in that way as well. So again, this is just really a snapshot. It doesn't reflect private health system costs, does not include hidden costs, does not even include some indirect costs, which again gives you an idea that we could be spending actually more money on health than, what we just pay, whether in insurances or indirect out-of-pocket payment to different health facilities. So when you go to see a GP, for example, or when you go to a hospital, or when you are hospitalized, technically there is cost even in that. It could be even the time you miss work, and the travel expenses, the fuel you put in your car to go and see the GP. So all those are still indirect costs, which are not counted, unfortunately, anywhere when it comes to measuring health expenditures. So again, this was just really to give you an idea on what we are talking about when we talk about health expenditures. And there has been really a shift in, the trends of how health broadly is funded. And, the way the Australian health system looks, what it looks like today was not exactly the same thing a few decades ago. In the 1940s, for example, there has been a constitutional amendment which allowed the government to fund health services, but this did not really authorize compelling doctors or dentists to provide services for a prescribed fee. And this amendment is the one explaining really why many people still pay out of pockets, and you'd still find many services, even when you have Medicare, not being funded by that. Services like dentist, for example, most of those you won't get them even under Medicare. When it comes to seeing an optometrist, technically there might be cost there, which might require a certain age to even be eligible to that. And technically, this is just, again, really to give you an idea on how dynamic our health system has been and how it kept evolving over time. And this speaks to what we said again in week one, that policy broadly is dynamic because it keeps changing. And you can see a clear example of this here. In the 1970s, you see clearly that's where we had, Medibank being launched. And this was the first initial comprehensive national health insurance, which covered many people, really, compared to what the situation had been before that. But Medicare itself, was eventually reintroduced by the Hawke government, with the system we mostly know today being firmly established only in 1994. So again, here I'm not aiming to give you, the details you might already have in mind, but technically just really giving you an idea on how our health system has evolved over time. So we might want to just give a quick reminder on what we meant by the two-tiered system. We spoke about Australia having the coexistence of private and public health insurance and provision. And again, you have a few details there in your textbook for this week on the type of delivery which is provided under the private and even the individual, or, you know, the public sector. And again, just a reflection really of the coexistence of both systems here. You might want to reflect on how this operates across different jurisdictions and in Queensland in particular. See who funds what and what does that mean in the context of where you live, even here in Queensland. Thank you very much, and I hope you now get to work on to the rest of the learning activities in this first module.